John Locke, shaping modern thought. John Locke was a very important person who helped create modern ideas about society and government. He wasn't just a thinker, he was also involved in the important events of his time. He lived in England during a period of big changes, and his ideas were shaped by what he saw happening around him. Locke was born in 1642 in a town called Somerset. His family was not super rich, but they were comfortable. When he was young, he went to Oxford University, but he didn't stand out at first. People thought he was just idle, unhappy, and unremarkable. But don't worry if you don't do great in college right away. Locke shows that you can still become someone amazing later in life. He eventually did well and became a teacher at Oxford. Early on, Locke had traditional and strong beliefs about power. He even said that the kings are good and the people are beasts, which sounds a lot like the ideas of another famous philosopher, Thomas Hobbes. England in turmoil. Locke lived during a time of big trouble in England. In 1649, King Charles I was killed, and the monarchy was gone for a while. Oliver Cromwell became the leader of England, called the Lord Protector. Even though many people liked Cromwell, he couldn't stop the fighting between the army and the government. This chaos reminded some people of the problems Hobbes had written about. When Cromwell died, his son tried to take over, but it didn't work. So, people decided to bring back the monarchy and ask Charles I's son, Charles II, to be the new king. These were tough years, and they definitely influenced Locke's thinking. There's even a connection between these events and a city in America called New Haven. Two judges who had been involved in the trial of Charles I were accused of killing the king. They ran away from England in 1660 and went to Boston. But Boston wasn't safe enough, so they went to New Haven. If you go to West Rock in New Haven, you'll see a sign that says Judges Cove. According to the story, the judges hid in this cove. Later, they moved to a house in Milford. Meeting the Earl of Shaftesbury. A big change in Locke's life happened in 1666, when he met Anthony Ashley Cooper, who later became the Earl of Shaftesbury. Shaftesbury was a nobleman who didn't like the king. He had fought against Charles I and had been part of the government during the time without a king. In 1666, Shaftesbury went to Oxford to get treatment for a liver problem. That's where he met Locke, who was a doctor. Locke became Shaftesbury's doctor and, in a way, his friend. Locke moved into Shaftesbury's house in London in 1667. He became Shaftesbury's helper, giving him advice and even performing surgery on him. Shaftesbury had too much fluid in his liver, and Locke put a tube in his stomach to drain it. Shaftesbury felt much better after the surgery. This shows that in the 1600s, there wasn't a clear separation between science, philosophy, and social science. Locke was involved in all of these areas, advocating for tolerance. In 1667, Locke wrote an essay called Essay on Toleration. This was a change from Hobbes's ideas. Locke argued that people should have the right to disagree with the government. Hobbes had said that people could only change their loyalty if the king failed to protect them. But Locke said that the right to disagree was a basic right for everyone. In 1668, Locke was elected to the Royal Society, which was like a science academy. By 1679, he was already working on his famous book, Two Treatises on Government. There was a growing conflict between King Charles II, the government, and the Earl of Shaftesbury. Charles II didn't have any legitimate children, so the next person in line to be king was his brother, James, who was Catholic. The government and Shaftesbury were worried that Catholics would gain power again and reduce the government's role. In 1673, the government considered a law called the Test Act. This law would have made people take a test to prove they weren't Catholic before they could hold certain jobs. It was a form of discrimination. Because Shaftesbury supported this law, he was fired from his position as Lord Chancellor. Later, the government passed a law to exclude James from becoming king, but Charles II dismissed the government. Shaftesbury was arrested and sent to the Tower of London. When he was released, he wisely left England and went to the Netherlands. In 1683, some members of the Whig Party, who were like the Democratic Party at the time, were accused of plotting to overthrow the king. Locke knew he might be in danger, so he also went to Amsterdam. In 1688, there was a revolution, and William of Orange became the new king. James II was overthrown because even the king's supporters didn't agree with his religious ideas. Return to England. Locke returned to England in 1690, feeling safe to do so. He died in 1704. His most important book, Two Treatises on Government, was published in 1690, but it was published anonymously because he was still worried about getting into trouble. Two Treatises on Government is a very important book that explains Locke's ideas about government. Some experts believe that the second part of the book was written first, in 1679, during the debates about excluding James from becoming king. Others believe it was written in 1683, and that it was a revolutionary book that supported the idea of a constitutional monarchy and the power of the people. The first part of the book is also important. It responds to a book called Patriarcha, written by Robert Filmer in 1680. Filmer argued that kings had absolute power because God had given Adam authority over the world, and kings were descended from Adam, challenging absolute power. Locke disagreed with Filmer on many points. He said that God had given the earth to all of mankind, not just to Adam. He also argued that even if Filmer was right, it would be impossible to trace a king's family tree back to Adam. And even if you could, it would be silly to base political power on ancestry. Locke's ideas helped to create modern democratic theory. He challenged the idea of absolute power and argued for the rights of individuals. His work is still important and relevant today. He argued that God made man and not the other way around.